Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We're happy to welcome you back and bring you the 5th episode in our Sync with an Expert series. I'm Nadine Flanagan, Inside Sales and Sales Operations Manager here at Safran Trusted 4D. Today's discussion will be focused on our new TimeLynx Time as a Service. We're excited to share this new service offering driven by customer demand to bring you even better reliability, redundancy, resilience, and traceability. To walk us through how TimeLynx can work for you, we will hear from 3 of our Safran experts today. Dave Sohn, Chief Engineer for Timing, Katie Schrack, Engineering Project Manager, and Denis Reilly, Timing Architect. After the presentation, we will jump into a live Q&A segment. Many of you have submitted questions in advance, and we thank you. We will be addressing those questions as well as additional inquiries that are submitted during the presentation. You can submit questions at any time using the Questions tab at the bottom of your screen. If a question requires more detailed response, we may follow up with you directly after the event. You will also see a few quick polls pop up throughout the session to help us better understand your interests and tailor our answers during the Q&A. And if you get disconnected at any point, just use the same link that you used to join the webinar to reconnect. We're also recording today's event, and the on-demand version will be shared with all registrants and available on our event page shortly after the session wraps up. Thanks again for being here. Now let's get started. I'll hand it over to Dave, Katie, and Denis to introduce you to the power of TimeLynx.
Thanks, Nadine. You know what? Excited to be back. Another session of Sync with an Expert, and a slightly new format. I'm excited to joined by now 2 guests, Denis and Katie, talking about TimeLynx, our new Time as a Service offering. But where can we start? What do we start with? Well, obviously, what is TimeLynx? What is TimeLynx, Denis? What are we doing?
So TimeLynx is a time as a service offering where we are offering the service in data center co-location environments. And once you're present in that area, it's very easy to work with your co-location provider to provision these connections. And so for the TimeLynx service, we took the approach of, we know many of our customers already know how to work with their co-location provider to put an antenna on the roof, bring that coaxial cable down to where their servers are, and serve time that way. But we can also, in addition to that, offer customers the option to take the time directly from our equipment over that fiber optic cable. And so that's really the core value proposition of TimeLynx.
Right. So in data centers, in specifically co-location data centers, timing as a service. So time as a service that we're providing that to the customer so they don't have to be the source of that time themselves. Okay. How do we deliver that time? What is that? What are we actually providing? So it's time as a service. What is the time? How are we delivering that?
So as part of the TimeLynx Time as a Service, the time is delivered directly over a fiber optic cross connect from our boundary clocks directly to whatever equipment the customer has. They can then synchronize to those feeds and pass that down further down into their architecture to their other devices. And a very important part of this is also what our sources are, where we get our time. Like customers, we can get time from GPS antennas on the roof, and that's relatively common. That time is pretty good. But as part of this offering, we're also working with various other entities that provide the time source for whatever country they happen to be in. These National Metrology Institutes, or NMIs. So in the case of our installation in Paris, for instance, we're working directly with the Paris Observatory to bring UTC time from their clocks directly into our infrastructure. And in areas where we can provision a direct connection like that, our GNSS feed is really just a backup to our very stable time that's coming direct from the UTC source.
Great. I mean, that's exciting. Who doesn't want that, right? But kind of coming back, so at a high level, what is TimeLynx? What is time as a service? We're delivering network timing, right? That's what they're getting from us. They're getting a network timing protocol from us, not NTP
No,
per se.
no, PTP and White Rabbit.
Right.
Yes.
PTP and White Rabbit is what we're delivering right now. And it's in a data center environment, in a co-location data center. So meaning we are providing it to the customers who are in those co-location data centers. And you mentioned that we're providing the source to those customers who then can use it through their own network distribution to all of their systems that are taking advantage of network timing themselves, right?
Correct.
So who is that for? Why would someone use this? What are we solving?
So one of the biggest, industries that we're targeting on is the financial industry. So any sort of financial market that's looking for very low latency in packets already is looking for equipment to be hosted as close as they can to the source of where the time feed is. So by us being able to pull in over dark fiber or DWDM or some other type of method directly from NMIs and then distribute that out to customer environments, we are able to pull in much more accurate time than the current GNSS antennas that are sitting on these data center roofs. So it's something that we're able to provide higher accuracy. It's also a nice partnership with these data center customers or data center companies that we've decided to partner with because they're able to offer this and also kind of make money off of the cross connects that we're setting up. So it's a nice partnership that we've worked on setting up with a couple major different data center partners in the co-location areas that we've been targeting. Right now we're, Paris, New York, Chicago, and working on London right now by June. So some of the major players that we're already working with are going to really help us be able to provide something unique to customers.
Okay. Well, you both talked about NMIs, so the National Metrology Institutes. Mm-hmm. Who are they? What? Give me the example. So in Paris, so in our Paris center, what are we doing?
So these NMIs around the world are participating in what essentially is the determination of what the official time is, of what the UTC timescale is for the entire planet. But each metrology institute maintains their own clocks for their own country, and then they monitor UTC and then provide the concept of UTC for that entire country. In France, those clocks reside at the Paris Observatory, as I already mentioned. In London, where we're going to be in just a few months, those clocks reside at the National Physical Laboratory, NPL. And so we will be partnering with them to bring time directly from NPL's UTC clock ensemble directly into our presence in Slough in the UK. In the US, those clocks are maintained by NIST. Mostly out of Boulder, Colorado, but they also maintain some clocks in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And over the course of this year, we are going to be going through the process to have a direct connection between the NIST clocks in those locations and our TimeLynx installations in New York and eventually Chicago.
So one of the values and differentiation of this service is that connectivity to that national reference of time, right? So, but why is that? How is that different than, my GNSS antenna that I've got on the roof? What's different about how we're providing it versus just getting it yourself from GNSS, right? Because GNSS has been what people are using.
So GNSS is very good at disseminating time, and one of the reasons for that is it's ubiquitous. It's like time and position information is falling from the sky for free.
I love that. Right from the sky. It's
right
coming
from the sky.
us.
But it is a broadcast medium. All of the satellites are broadcasting the signals down to Earth. The signals themselves aren't very high power. Today's receivers do a very good job at extracting the signal from the noise and at coming up with a very good determination of position and by extension timing. But since it is being broadcast, there can be instances where atmospheric disturbances can alter how the signal is received. There can be instances where just unintentional jamming from other devices nearby broadcasting at the same frequency might drown out the GPS receivers. There are also areas of the world right now where, since the GPS signal is on a known frequency, that for various reasons that signal can be spoofed. And so what you receive on your antenna may actually be generated by someone else. That's very rare. It's hard to pull off, but it does happen in some places of the world. That doesn't mean that GNSS is a bad source of time. But what it means is that GNSS is so good at being a traceable source of time that when these hiccups happen, they're noticeable. When we bring time direct in from the metrology institutes, we're taking a terrestrial route. So we're bringing it in over dark fiber or using other methods over longer distances. And so even though there are different ways where those signals can fail, they're not the same ways as the satellite signals. So by bringing in these signals in a separate medium with different failure modes, we make our entire offering more robust than what a customer can get if they're only relying on the GNSS.
Plus, also customers right now normally would have to host their own GNSS antenna, their own timing equipment within their racks that are in these geolocations or these co-locations. So it's something that we can do by providing that time source into our rack, even with a GNSS antenna alone, and then distributing it to customer networks so they don't have to maintain that portion themselves. So they now only have to receive the time feed on their end and not actually manage the master clock and things on their end, which is a huge, I would say, like money saver for them. And also, resource, not having to have anyone understand timing really within their company to an extent of trying to manage a master clock and all of the GNSS stuff that comes with that. So it's kind of distributing that workload over to us versus a customer having to have that.
Okay, so I'm hearing a couple different differentiations that we have and how we're doing it. A little bit is coming down to we're not doing something that a customer, a user of this service couldn't do themselves, but we're making that easier for them. We're taking some of that burden, some of that responsibility, and taking that on ourselves. There's a financial aspect to it.
Yes.
You talked about the cost of having a GNSS antenna on the roof of these data centers. There's a fee for that. There's you're renting that space, you're leasing that space, and so you have to pay for that every month. There's the running of the cables that you have to do to actually make that connection, and any sort of logistics that might happen if something happened to that antenna or that infrastructure that's connecting you. Actually, the same way, right? Even connecting to the NMIs and the dark fiber and maintaining those links and the contracts for those things. There's a cost and a logistics and a management overhead for those things. And now we're doing that.
Yes.
Right? We're doing that for them. So we can do that referencing and then provide that as you call it a handoff to the customer.
Yes.
And then they can then take that network timing into their distribution and then send it and use it wherever they need that. It doesn't necessarily have to replace what they have, right? So it can take those feeds and feed into what they have.
Right. You can never really have too many different sources of the correct time because it matters so much to your business, right? And so you want to be able to fail over from one source to another if something happens. So if a customer already has an antenna provision on the roof, if they already have a grandmaster clock synchronizing, they can still take in our service and integrate it with the rest of their time distribution. Not only do they then gain the benefit of having the direct NMI connection, but even if they're still using their local antenna for some things, they've got a backup for that just in case that antenna gets a lightning strike or something. These are all things that are very rare, but need to be planned for if you really want your infrastructure up, and to be resilient. So it's really up to the customer to decide when they provision our feed, whether they want to use it with a feed they already have, or, over time, they could gain enough confidence in the feed that we're giving them with all the redundancy we have built in that they just decide they don't need the antenna. But we can work either way.
Right. So in addition to handling all of those, this might actually reduce some of the maintenance costs that they already have by using the feed, getting comfortable with it, and potentially removing some of their own infrastructure that they have. Not that they have to do that, but the benefit is you were talking about coming back through our feed, even as a secondary source, with our link to the NMI of adding that traceability into that path, right?
Yes. Yeah, and so over time, what we would expect as customers to see that our source of time is more accurate or more stable than what they have set up currently. That is obviously our desire and our goal is to prove that out to customers. We're very confident in the SLA we provide and guarantee to customers. We have a 100 nanosecond guarantee, 100 nanosecond or less for White Rabbit and 250 nanosecond or less for PTP. We are able to actually measure this internally in each of our deployments because of a tool that we've developed at Safran called PNT360. So it's something you've probably heard about already. It's something you as a customer can technically buy to monitor your own deployments of your infrastructure currently, but we're actually using that ourselves within TimeLynx. So our PNT360 app is constantly scanning all of the infrastructure that we have deployed and ensuring that we have traceability to the NMIs, ensuring that there's time traceability straight from the NMI to our timing equipment that's in these co-locations and up straight through to the cross connect to the customer. So as soon as you get that feed from us, we are guaranteeing those SLAs because we are able to actually see right out of the point where it enters that cross connect to your network that it is within our SLAs.
Well, PNT360, I love hearing about that. I love it when we are using the technology that we have both internally and delivering that to customers. And you talked about learning more about it. We did do a sync with an expert with PNT360 that's available for people to learn even more about how that tool is used for monitoring your systems, being able to see what's happening, the reporting from there, and also alerts that you can get. And that's an integral part of the service and the back end that we're providing for TimeLynx and the service to the customers.
Yeah, and if we're not currently providing TimeLynx within your area, you can still use PNT360 for your own internal deployments if you want the type of traceability and monitoring that we provide in that platform.
We're using our own tools, so the same thing that customers are seeing, customer requests, we're building that ourselves for monitoring this service that we have. So looking at the performance to be able to see that the service is operating at the level we need. We're meeting our service level agreements, the SLAs for each of these, whether it's the White Rabbit or PTP. Maybe come back to again, we talked about it in a few different ways. This cross connect. How does a customer actually do that? What is that process to actually connect into our service?
So for this, we're relying on the services that are offered by our co-location partner wherever we are. They exist. The reason why these co-location facilities exist is to connect companies to other companies. And they're very good at that. So in this case, what would happen is after you contact our sales team and get all the required agreements in place, we will find the right contact at your company who can authorize these connections, and we will send them an authorization to connect from your cage or facility into our cage. And then that gets handed to the co-location provider, and then they will facilitate the connection between our cage and your cage. And it only takes a matter of days. And once that connection is set up, you can plug your end of the connection into your time equipment and get the time.
Okay. And so there's actual, of course, we're talking about, network time. And so these are physical network connections that are happening through the data center partners, so our co-location partners. And so we need, obviously, you have two companies, Safran and the customer, that are putting together these agreements based on the contracts we're getting from the customer, that we're telling the co-location, both sides are telling the co-location, okay, we can make this connection. What is that connection? Because how does that look for them? Because we talked about, the resilience and on the front end, you talk about some of the vulnerabilities of GNSS and why it's nice to have these different modalities of connectivity that we have with the NMIs. That resiliency doesn't stop where we're providing it. We're also providing that resiliency in the handoffs too, right?
Right. So the actual physical handoffs, the service is delivered over a bidirectional link, so it's a single simplex fiber per connection. But with each subscription, you get two connections. And those two connections are sourced from different equipment inside our infrastructure that in most cases are getting time from two separate timing chains, even back to the NMI. In our connection with the Paris Observatory, we have two dark fiber lines going from the observatory to our co-location presence in Saint-Denis in Paris. And so we have those two separate lines coming in, going into two separate sets of equipment. Everything is cross-connected, so if one line goes down but the other line is up, we still have that connection to the observatory. And then you get two feeds based on that.
All right, so we have the resilience on our front end. We have the resilience and the redundancy through the architecture. So we have dual paths at the cross connect. So the handoff to the customer, they actually get two redundant connections from us, whether White Rabbit or PTP, back into two pieces of redundant equipment, and then redundant paths back to all of our sources too. So right. So that resilience and redundancy built in, plus, as we say, the monitoring that we're doing with PNT 360 to make sure that we're keeping on top of what's happening with that, with the notifications internally and the staff here who are present to handle any of the challenges or difficulties with that. What kind of communication do we expect with customers on this service? So what you've gotten the service, what kind of communication, what kind of information do we expect customers to be able to get from us?
So I guess really our view is that once we establish that connection, that cross connection, the service should be just running for you, right? So because of all the redundancy that we've built back into our systems and our architecture, even if we internally see something going on with one of the feeds in a data center or something happening, most of it should be completely seamless to a customer, right? So anything that we see, we've seen things like that, right? We've seen little spikes, little blips, but we can always see that immediately. We have internal escalations to be able to view those as they come up and react to them quickly. But yeah, we don't expect really anything to be super visible to a customer that isn't something that we've already seen and understood or already remediated. So obviously, if we see something, we're working on kind of a communication plan of how we plan to notify customers, right? So a lot of the things that you might hear from us if you sign up for the service is, hey, we know that we're going to have some downtime over the weekend. We're installing new software or upgrading our equipment. So there's things like that we'll have to plan and you'll get notified for. And we also, obviously, if we notice something, we would notify customers of something if it's something that would directly affect the timing feed, right? So we have an SLA that we are very positive we can meet, but we wouldn't want to not let you, notice things. So like we've had things where we've seen the feed, where we can't see something from the customer end, or we're not sure if why we can't see that feed going into that customer. So in those cases, we've reached out to say, hey, is there something that's going on your end? Usually that's a customer having their own planned downtime where, but we're just checking, right? So that's kind of the things that we would be communicating with after you sign up for the service. But ideally, you won't really hear from us. That's the goal, is to have a nice, stable time feed that's redundant and something that you can count on.
Right. And if there ever are any any customer support type issues with the service, we do have our standard support that the customer can email into, can call into, that will be escalated to the TimeLynx team for us to take a look at. But our experience so far has been that once that service is set up, once that initial connection is made, because of all the redundancy we've built in, we can meet our SLA commitments rather easily. It's really just monitoring everything and making sure that in the very rare events when things do go wrong, if we do see some glitches, we can make sure that those glitches don't make their way into the customer feeds because of all the redundancy we have built in. We also have monitoring equipment inside our infrastructure, which is listening to our time feeds as a customer would. So in many cases, if there is an issue, we'll see the issue right alongside you. And if you do have an issue and call it into support, we've probably already seen it.
Okay, so we have means to mitigate common issues that are happening within there to limit the impact on the customers or even remove any impact from the customers. You talked about maintenance windows. So, I mean, there is infrastructure behind this, right? Things need to be upgraded. Things, something might need to be replaced and things like that. How are we managing that on our side to prevent that from being seen by the customer?
So there are going to be certain maintenance activities that the customer is we're not going to be able to hide from the customer because we serve the time directly from pieces of our equipment. And if we have to upgrade that equipment, if we have to apply a firmware update, the customer is going to see the service go out for a short period of time and then come back. We have a time period specified in our contract for advanced notification for all these things. So we'll let the customer know whenever this maintenance activity happens. And we're also going to do it whenever possible outside of business hours in that local time zone. Ideally, Friday night or Saturday night, so that any of that maintenance that happens done at a less critical time. We will also only work on one feed at a time so that the customer always has a feed which is available, which has the proper time. And these are all different practices that we're going to take going forward to make sure that the service itself stays as reliable as possible, that it's available when our customers need it, while we can still make sure that it's upgraded to have the best possible experience.
Right. So a lot of this maintenance, this back end stuff, we'll do, and it'll be invisible to the customer. But where we do have, service upgrades, things like that are going to affect the customer, affect the handoff to them. In the contracts in the SLA, we have maintenance windows, which are, as you said, outside of, let's say, regular business hours of wherever that data center, that region is, that are in the less critical times. But even during there, mitigating the effect on the customer by only ever affecting, one side or the other of the redundant links that are coming in. So
yeah, so if we're upgrading our, master clock software, that's something we can do one first and then do the next once the other one's up and online. So you won't even probably see something with your service unless you're monitoring both lines and wondering what's right. So the redundancy will still be there, but
yeah. So we have those upstream maintenance things which may be invisible, and then as it ends up, Dennis, you had said, at some point there's a physical piece of equipment that is connected to another physical piece. When you affect that one, that is affecting that direct connection, and we'll let the customers know about those maintenance activities so they can ensure that on their end, they have the A and B feed, the redundant feeds coming in, that they're aware of what's going to be happening on those if there's a maintenance window that's going to affect that timing, right? Well, I guess a little bit sort of the availability and maybe the business side of things a little bit. You went through and you talked about the answers. Where is the service available now?
Okay, so right now we're online in Paris, New York City, and Chicago. We are currently working on our deployment in London, so that will be online sometime in June, give or take. And we have plans to eventually expand to the APAC region next year. And again, this is something where we're targeting certain areas based on where we know certain, markets are looking for this type of service. However, if you have interest and you're in certain co-location providers, but we're not quite where you are yet, we're very interested in hearing from you and understanding where that is, because it's very easy for us to get enough request for a certain area and then plan a deployment there, right? So we have a kind of bread and butter thing now going with where we want to provide service to. And if it makes sense for us, it's sort of a, break even point for us where once we have enough interest, it's very easy for us to go install there and then provide time to you and do that heavy legwork for you, setting up all of this and then being able to provide time. So definitely, if you see that we're not quite where you are yet, please don't just not reach out to us. We're very interested. We are tracking that internally. Make sure to speak to your sales rep. We definitely want to hear from you.
Oh, 100%. This is where I love to plug it. We want to hear from you. We love talking with our customers and potential customers. So 3 metro areas right now, with a 4th coming online soon, and then looking to both expand within the metro areas
Yes.
as well as new metro areas, right?
Correct.
Because there's right now we're in in each of these metro areas, there's a number of co-location data center providers.
Yes.
We're in a set right now, and so we'll be expanding both within a single metro area as well as looking at new metro areas, based on the customer feedback, customer requests, and just the growth in that we see in those markets. All right, so we talked about that onboarding and getting that contract in place. What do we expect when you sign that contract? What does that look like?
Okay, so what customers will do is they will sign the contract with us. Once they sign a contract, we will enable a 60-day beta period for that customer. That 60-day beta period basically starts from when we establish that letter of authorization with you and you're able to actually set up that cross-connect through the co-location provider and you have a live feed. So as soon as you get that live feed from us, we start that 60-day beta period. You have free service during that period to test and feel confident in what you're buying from us. Eventually, if you get to the end of that 60 days and you're very happy with what you see, the billing period will start. And you basically, depending on which contract you sign, whether it's a 1, 2, or 3 year, which is what we're currently offering, your contract would start, right? So that first year is really 10 months of being billed. And then the subsequent years would be the full 12 months. And as you walk through the beta period, if you're not sure of what you're seeing or what you like, that's okay. We want to hear from you. We expect that you won't see anything really based on the redundancy we've built into the system. We will have someone from our sales team reaching out to you, halfway through the beta period, making sure everything's good, how things are going, and seeing if you want to really convert towards the end of that 60 days. But what you sign on for is that if we don't hear from you in that 60 days, we will start that billing period, right? So that's what's in our contracts. It's time as a service. So that's how we're kind of doing it, as a subscription-based service.
Great. So I love that. So they can sign on this 1, 2, or 3 year contract, and there's a 60-day period in front of that. Check it out, look at the performance, check that their interoperability is as they expect it, seeing how the stability in those pieces, and then going right into the regular contract length that they signed on to. But, of course, wouldn't want to do this without plugging our great support and service and applications team that we're here to support the customer. We love getting that feedback from them. We are monitoring this ourselves. We have the test devices that we have in those systems so that we can see, as a customer would see, what's happening with that, as well as all of that traceability monitoring with PNT 360 to see all of the stages back to our sources. And so we can manage all of that so that maybe they don't have to contact us. But if they do, we have into our support channels that then go right into our TimeLynx team to manage any of those questions and issues that come up. And so thanks, Katie and Dennis, for sticking around. because now we come to that great feedback session, right? We talked about the customer piece. So I'm going to hand it back over to Nadine and go into our live Q&A.
Thank you so much. So it was great teamwork and fun to watch. We hope you now have a better understanding of how this new time service can work best for you. And as our experts mentioned, this time service is monitored through our PNT 360 management platform. PNT 360 was presented in an earlier Sync with an Expert video and can be watched on demand. If you would like to learn more about TimeLynx and how it could work for you, there will be a link in the webinar that directs you to the TimeLynx product page. Now we'll begin our live Q&A session. This is your chance to ask our experts any questions about TimeLynx or anything else related to your timing needs. So once again, I'll hand things back to Dave, Katie, and Dennis to get us started.
Again, thank you, Nadine. So again, if you have any questions or want to discuss your timing synchronization needs with us, we'll put a link on the screen. Go to our website and fill out the form, and we'll get back to you. Another important piece, I love this live Q&A. Want to make sure that we can get to as many of the questions that we can. So we may go over the 1 hour mark. Feel free to stay if you can. Otherwise, this session is being recorded and you can come back and see the remainder. So let's get in there. First question is around the applications for TimeLynx. So time solutions for fintech and medical and colo, for exchanges, for airports, transportation. Dennis, what do you think about that?
So for this TimeLynx service, we're not really differentiating between any of the end markets. So if we can bring our time into a facility and have enough customers there to justify our presence there, we'll sell to any industry. We're starting with fintech because we know that there is a critical mass of customers there that can use this service. But if it's not limited to fintech. If you're in another industry and want to come connect with us, please talk with us and see if we can work something out.
That's right. So the application isn't really what's driving this. It's really just the colo data centers that were actually installed in for the service. And once you take that service, it's really up to you what you're doing with that timing at that point, right? All right. So this is a good one. How do we actually make that connection? We talked a little bit about that, but the second part to this is cybersecurity concerns on this connectivity.
So each TimeLynx connection is a direct physical cross connect, a direct fiber connection to our private infrastructure in the colo. And the only packets going across these are timing data. And all of the devices that are physically delivering the service to the customer have no direct connection to anything outside of our internal network. We manage everything through a private connection to PNT 360. So that entire infrastructure is isolated from not only the internet, but anything external. And so we can guarantee that the timing data that we send you is not exposed.
That's right. So we're not doing data switching on our side on the connection. It's just a timing connection through the cross connect into our space, into isolated ports on our equipment to provide the PTP or White Rabbit, depending on the service selected. So this is interesting. So actually, all these questions are interesting. I keep saying that, but it's because I love this so much. How does this compare to, let's say, on-premise solutions that have this high resilience, this 5.9 kind of resilience and availability? How does our TimeLynx infrastructure support that kind of thing within a colo environment instead of on-premise?
Yeah, so I would say this is architected in the same way we would recommend that you architect this in your own environment if it was hosted on-prem, right? So we have redundant, resilient connections, 2 feeds. So anything that we're doing within our own service solution is something that we would recommend if you were to buy our equipment and install it yourselves. So security, the resiliency, all of that is going to be very similar. It's just something that you don't have to manage yourselves on site.
Yeah, and the other piece is because we're in these data centers, we are also getting all of the let's say infrastructure of the data center resilience as well, the power, cooling, that sort of thing coming from the data center partners, providing that piece on the infrastructure. And then, as you said, the architecture that we use in TimeLynx would be very similar to kind of the resilient architecture with redundancy that we recommend to our customers as well. So this is now a little, and we have a couple of these talking about where we are located. So, and maybe I'll extend this a little bit. It's asking, is this service principally available in larger data centers in developed countries, or is it a little bit more limited? We did talk a little bit about that, about where we are currently, and maybe also just reiterate kind of generally our plans.
Yeah, so right now we're in Chicago, New York, we're in Paris, we're working on installing in London. That should be coming online around June of this year. And then we have expansion within those those actual locations to other data center companies, so we have better coverage. But we also have plans to expand to Frankfurt, eventually APAC. So we're targeting different areas in those regions that we know are high volume customers, where there's a service like this that would be in demand. Again, we are willing to consider any location if there's enough demand in that location. So that's why it's important that you reach out to us and let us know what you're looking for. Because if we have enough interest, there's no reason that we can't go to any data center, across the globe, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So there's two dimensions to that, right? Is expansion within a given metro center because of the co-location part of it, right? So you have to be within that data center or that connectivity to that data center to get access to the service. So expanding to other data center partners within a metro area, and then as well expansion to other metro areas around the world, dependent on the amount of business that's available and infrastructure being available as well. Let's see. Oh, I love this one. So this comes again, another question about resilience and reliability, but this one a little bit not in the general sense, but talking about how are we protecting ourselves against interference attacks, so jamming, spoofing events, things like that.
Right. And so in our timing infrastructure, we do have Safran secure syncs that are connected to antennas on the roof of these colo centers. And those secure syncs are running our BroadShield software. So that BroadShield software is monitoring the GNSS feed. And if it sees any evidence of jamming or spoofing, it will help mitigate against that. However, keep in mind that a key value proposition of this TimeLynx service is that we also have a direct terrestrial connection to the NMI in as many metros as that's possible. Ideally, all metros. And as long as that NMI connection, that direct connection, is active, our GNSS receivers are really secondary to that. And so we can provide a traceable UTC feed, even if there is a more widespread GNSS problem.
Yeah, that's right. So our primary is to the traceable source at the NMI, generally over that terrestrial feed that we have, right? And so jamming and spoofing attacks are mitigated at the first level because GNSS is not our primary reference in locations, right? And so, however, if there's a problem with that NMI feed and we do fail over to our secondary reference, our traceability then is through the GNSS, and then we have our interference detection mitigation software that we use with our infrastructure, BroadShield, in order to have that protection on there, in order to monitor what's happening with that feed. Let's see. Question on Availability, this one is actually kind of specific. Availability in India for within the IST time zone. And I'll just say right now, as Katie had said, we're in New York, Chicago, Paris, and coming out in London. Availability in India would be dependent on market and then timing and priority in comparison to other markets and expansion in metro areas. I like this one. So this is talking about what is the trade-off of using the service, the TimeLynx service, versus using dedicated hardware within your system. Dennis, you want to talk a little bit?
And so both options are very good options depending on the application. A user that has their own dedicated timing hardware needs to be able to manage the entire connection between their dedicated timing hardware and whatever that source of time is, ideally an antenna on the roof, but also needs to understand the failure modes of that connection. GNSS antennas, we've already mentioned jamming and spoofing. They're subject to even simple things such as a lightning strike that might take the antenna out on the roof. And then the actual devices, they do have atomic oscillators in them. And while the atomic oscillators are very good, they do have a lifespan. And so these are all things that, although failures in this equipment are rare, things that have to be taken into account when you're planning a 24/7 service. And so customers who host their own infrastructure already know how to plan for resiliency that way. But we've designed all the same things into our service so that no single point of failure can take down any of the time feeds that we send.
Right. So that's important. And then another aspect of this is really that this doesn't have to take the place of dedicated hardware. This can be in addition to what you already have, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So you could run the service alongside of your infrastructure you already host, just to have a separate redundant provider of time. So, right, you could run this into an existing 2400 you have as a backup. So it really depends on what you're looking for. But it's definitely something that we feel, doesn't have really any different constraints, probably less constraints from the perspective of not having to manage everything yourself on your network if you're actually, looking to use this over hosting your own hardware.
Yeah, right. So that's the big aspect. We did touch on that earlier on, a big piece of the benefits of this is, that we are managing what's really that key piece of your timing architecture, which is the referencing and the source, and adding the resilience and reliability there. And so we're able to take that on and spread really the cost and maintenance of that infrastructure across the multiple customers that we're doing for the service, versus an individual customer who is doing all of that themselves, right? So there's that cost aspect in relation to the cost of the service versus managing all of that yourself. But it's not a either or. You can add that resilience into your own system, into your reference as the either the primary or backup to what you already have. So this is another one. So what would you say the trade-offs between time synchronization using, it's around network timing, so PTP or White Rabbit, versus, let's say, a direct 10 megahertz PPS, 1 PPS signal from a local oscillator? What do you think the trade-offs are between those?
Well, I think in my view, they're really doing the same thing. What you're doing is you're transmitting frequency and the 1 second time, the top of the second, from some other reference, which is ideally traceable to UTC. Now, the P2P White Rabbit protocol simply does that with packets, and in such a way that the time is transferred in both directions, so that you can account for the overall length of the cable. The White Rabbit protocol also is built on top of synchronous Ethernet, which is a direct frequency source that goes along the wire, just not 10 megahertz. It's the frequency of the underlying Ethernet. So really, the two methods are doing the same thing. You just get you get a bit more with the White Rabbit protocol. You get that delay compensation. You do get that frequency synchronization, and you also get the wall clock time. If you're using 10 megahertz and 1 PPS, you still have to have another source, perhaps NTP, to know the name of that second, to know what the actual time is. And so since they're basically driven from oscillators of a certain stability, they kind of do the same thing. The PTP White Rabbit protocol can offer benefits in the right situation.
Yeah, a little bit of this comes back to, in your architecture, looking at how you're managing distribution. Now, if this is a point-to-point connection from one piece of equipment to another, that isn't necessarily so complicated. But if you look at your entire architecture that you would take from a timing feed, looking at a signal-based distribution, 1 PPS, 10 megahertz, versus a network timing distribution, they look very different, right? And one can be a bit more complex to set up in parallel to what you typically already have in doing your regular networking, right? Very related to using regular PTP. The regular PTP, you can send across all of your regular network equipment, that you have with boundary clocks and such. If you were going to do 1 PPS distribution, you're talking about setting up a whole parallel distribution structure to get from your source out to your end nodes, right? That's great. So does taking it involve hardware, or is it a software solution only?
So it's not just software. So obviously the hardware that exists up in our infrastructures that we put in these co-locations exists. But from your perspective, what you're getting, you do have to host something to receive the time on your end. So you get 2 direct feeds when you sign up. Those feeds have to go into something that can take that time. So there is a little bit of infrastructure on your side, but much less than what you would have to host if you were hosting the entire GNSS antenna and everything else that goes into having a grandmaster clock, having the redundancy in case something were to fail. So it's definitely not just software, but definitely way less hardware than you would be used to managing without something like this.
Yeah, and I guess this, I can maybe extend this a little bit and say specialized hardware, right? And while for White Rabbit, that does typically require specialized hardware on the receive side, well, hardware and software, right? On the receive side to accept that White Rabbit. PTP, that really depends on how you're using it. That can be a combination of hardware, of dedicated hardware, or at least hardware that is PTP aware, and then potentially software solutions at the endpoints to absorb that PTP. All right. Oh, I love this because it's a question related to our own products, right? So we did touch on this, and maybe we talk some specifics about the product. So if they already have a secure sync, so they're already using a secure sync as their reference, as their time server in their architecture, how can TimeLynx be used as a secondary source for that secure sync?
Right. So the TimeLynx service will come in as a White Rabbit feed or a PTP feed. And there are several ways to get those into the 2400. And the 2400 gives you the ability to set different references in a priority order. So you can definitely take however the 2400 is However you decide the 2400 is getting its primary time, could be GNSS, could be some other method. You can make that the first reference. And then however the 2400 is getting time from TimeLynx would end up being a backup reference, and the 2400 would manage the switchover.
Right. So looking at Secure Sync and the options available, obviously Secure Sync is a very modular system, and we extend that capability through the option cards. So for example, if you're taking the White Rabbit feed from TimeLynx, we have the White Rabbit option card for Secure Sync that you can install that can receive that White Rabbit. And as Dennis was saying, through the reference management on the system, you can select there, okay, what is my primary, what is my secondary? Even more than that, if you have additional references, you can have them listed out. With PTP, we have built-in capability on the main network ports of the system for accepting PTP as a reference, and through some of our option cards as well. So, let's see, what accuracy are you providing at the data centers? You talked about before, just mention it again.
Yeah, so 100 nanosecond or less accuracy for White Rabbit, and 250 nanosecond or less for PTP.
And so that's our SLA. That's what we commit to. In practice, on a regular basis, we're getting much better than that, especially in Paris, which is our first installation where we have a direct fiber connection to the NMI, to the Paris Observatory. We easily see single-digit nanosecond, or even better, over our White Rabbit link to the observatory. But the 100 nanoseconds, the 250 nanoseconds, that's our SLA that we are standing behind.
Right. So we have our contractual thing under our SLA, and then we have what is our our typical performance.
Right.
And that can vary a little bit depending on our connectivity to the NMI, right? So we are obviously reliant on that connection, and the kind of accuracy that we get over that connection is then what we are using to provide the downstream service to customers. So we can maintain that to our SLA level, but we are looking to actually typically perform much better. And so we are looking at constantly within the system of how can we improve the way that we take the time from the NMI, and then how we actually run it through our infrastructure to then deliver to the customer. I love these. Get into. I mean, this isn't. It's a little bit outside of TimeLynx, and maybe we'll just do a brief discussion, because this could be a whole webinar in itself. How do you typically architect on the receiving end of it? So they get into their architecture, and then what does it look like from there typically? Dennis, you want to talk for a second on that?
So in a financial installation, the customer will be getting the time from our service, and then we'll have to distribute that. And in many cases, I've seen in financial applications in particular, the time, getting the time to end nodes in a consistently accurate way is so important that sometimes you do build out a separate network. And so you can use something like a Z16 to take our White Rabbit feed and distribute it out to all the nodes that need that precise traceable timing, and do that directly. It is possible to distribute time on a network where other types of data are being transmitted, especially if you have a good PTP transparent clock. That'll make sure that any storing of packets inside a switch isn't affecting the time transfer. Those are both very valid ways to do it, either building out a separate timing network or doing everything within the same network you use for your data. And it really depends on the application that's being targeted and the criticality of the data that's being transmitted.
Right. Okay. Anything else? Think about, they have, it will depend a little bit on on what they're taking in, right? So whether they're using White Rabbit or PTP, you guys were talking about whether it's a hardware or software solution on the end, right? One, depending on what you're taking in, you may need some dedicated hardware. And then how far you're taking that through your distribution, you may need more of that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, with White Rabbit, we have our White Rabbit products. With PTP, you can use our products as well for distributing PTP, but that may also go over your regular network infrastructure and distribute that way. One thing to be aware of in these architectures is one, the number of hops you're going through. Another piece is the redundancy that you build into your distribution, the impacts that can have of whether you're doing shared infrastructure with your data, or you're doing kind of dedicated infrastructure for your network timing. And you can have different needs even within your own architecture for critical endpoints that you want to isolate and make sure the timing is as clean as possible going to them. And let's say maybe your general infrastructure that maybe is using timing for less critical activities, so. Katie, maybe you can answer this one. So according to what we talk about, we are distributing from TimeLynx based on a reference from an NMI.
Correct.
So
yes.
Where we are,
Yes. So
we use different NMIs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So right now, we're connected to the Paris Observatory in Paris. Our Chicago and New York data centers are currently connected to NIST via TaaS. We are in the process of a direct connection over DWDM to NIST that should be coming online a little bit later this year, around Q3. We're just running through some evaluation and testing of that line before we bring that online. And then for London, we will be directly connected to NPL over dark fiber.
Yeah, and it should be noted that we have TaaS currently in New York and Chicago, and that's a satellite-based traceability system that goes directly back to NIST and Boulder. And that's you can argue that's a prerequisite to really getting the direct time in from NIST, because it helps calibrate having the two services together. Our end goal in both New York and Chicago is to get a direct connection from NIST in Boulder or Gaithersburg.
Right. So when we look at our different TimeLynx installations and infrastructure, we are getting from an NMI, but the NMI is, let's say, the local or sovereign NMI for that region, that location that we're in. So, in France, it's from the Paris Observatory. In the UK, it's from NPL. In the US, it's from NIST, right?
Correct. Yep.
So, and then as we extend out, that's the model that we're using for our future expansion is within the same metro areas. We'll be using, obviously the same NMI that we were using. Expanding to other metro areas, it'll be access to that sovereign NMI, that regional NMI that we will connect to in order to get that traceability. So there's a question of how we have been deployed. I think we sort of answered this. Has it been deployed as a hybrid solution with a secure sync that's already installed and having this as a backup? I said that's one of the primary installation methods for this, right? We talked about that you can take that in as a direct feed into your distribution, or you can take it in as a backup to a source you already have, right? And so it's really dependent on that customer, right? And oh, sorry, guys, go ahead.
And really, if time is that critical for your business, you can always benefit from having more sources of traceable, trustable time. And if you trust the time that you get in your facility directly using a primary 2400, and you can definitely bring our service in either as the primary source or the secondary source to that. Simply having access to more traceable sources is only going to benefit you in the long run. It'll prevent any individual source having a problem from you not meeting your service commitments.
Yeah, and I'll say the other thing that we talked about is you may have your own solution when you start. We do have that 60-day beta period, so you can connect in and monitor it and then see
And that's
where
what we
you go
would
from
expect.
there. Right.
Yeah, we would expect most customers to probably initially sign on, pull it into their existing infrastructure as a secondary source, and evaluate it to see if it's kind of living up to what we're saying, and if they see any benefit to maybe getting rid of some infrastructure down the road. But we're definitely not expecting customers to sign on and take it immediately and then just drop all the infrastructure they already have on site. That's definitely probably not the most realistic thing to happen. So
Right. So, I mean, but it's an option, right? So,
yeah.
you take it on, you sign on with TimeLynx, you have that 60-day beta period on the front end of your contract, and you can look at interoperability, at the performance, the reliability of it. And then you can make those decisions later on about your own infrastructure. Okay, do I maintain what I have? Do I adjust my infrastructure now that I have this service coming in? And based on, the usage of it, to see, okay, down the road, can I adjust? Is there an opportunity for getting some savings by reducing here or there while maintaining that service now that you have it?
Yeah, even with the 60-day beta period expiring, when you actually start getting billed, it's it's $1,900 a month for PTP and $2,160 for the White Rabbit service. So even if you want to keep it on and just continue to evaluate it, it comes at a relatively low cost to do so alongside of the existing infrastructure you have set up.
Oh, so this is an interesting one. Actually, we touched on this a little bit, actually even earlier when we were talking some of the trade-offs. So this question is asking, okay, if I'm already near that NMI, what's the advantage of using TimeLynx instead of themselves directly connecting? We talked about some logistics and infrastructure pieces. Kind of revisit that again.
Right, and so there are some logistical steps to go through to contract with the connectivity provider to get time directly from the NMI, and not all NMIs offer a public service to do this. These NMIs are really local government-run science labs, after all, and some of them, NIST has as its charter aid in commerce, and so NIST does have a fairly well-developed program to deliver time over fiber, but not every NMI does. And so what we're really doing is leveraging our relationships with these NMIs to be able to get that direct connection. In some cases, some customers might be able to achieve the same thing at their own cost, but we're doing it just once, getting our connection from the NMI and then amortizing that across to all customers. So we do believe it offers a definite good value proposition over a customer rolling their own connection.
Yeah, so there's that piece of, okay, there's contracting. It's not just the, as you're saying, it's not just the NMI, it's the connectivity partner you need to also to bring it in to your location. There's the monitoring aspect that we're doing with PNT 360. And then another actually important aspect is, if you are doing this in multiple locations, that's multiple of these setups that you have to manage, right?
Yeah.
And it can get complicated. It can be expensive to do all of that yourself, and the logistics of then maintaining that over time, et cetera. So there are trade-offs, right? And it may be that if you have an easy access to that kind of service directly from the NMI, that may work for you, right? So that's an interesting question. Does it matter what NMI that you connect to? Isn't it all UTC?
I mean, yes. So yes, it's really depending on the location, right? So we're connecting to the NMIs in the local region, like Dave said earlier. So, but yes, it's all UTC. That's what they are pulling in for themselves and managing themselves. So that's something that, it really just depends. If you're in the US, you're going to get NIST. If you're in Paris,
and so part of that distinction is the legal time in each country is defined in many cases by the government-owned NMI. And so from the perspective of overall UTC, yes, there are minor differences. Most people operationally don't care about the minor differences, but the legal team may care about the fact that if you're in the UK, you're getting time from NPL. If you're in the US, you're getting time from NIST. And so that's really where the value is in that legal traceability.
Yeah, right. So it's not necessarily that they're really different UTC. I mean, although technically they are, right? So the way UTC operates is it is a collaborative sense of time where each of these NMIs and actually other monitoring will feed into BIPM in Paris, and then they come up with the synthesis of all of those things to say this is what UTC is.
Right.
But they actually do that delayed, right? So
You're right.
you get UTC, of what it was a month ago is what they tell you. And it's just by tracking that we're able to really manage it within all of these different NMIs.
Right.
But from a regulatory and legal standpoint, sometimes within a sovereign area, they want that to come from their legal source of time, which is, of course, their own sovereign NMI, and that's really why we do that.
And so you can argue that GNSS provides a common baseline, but each individual constellation gets its time from a different place. The GPS constellation in the U.S. gets its time from the U.S. Naval Observatory, and so some people may care about where their time is coming from.
This is a good one on initial setup. So when installing the infrastructure in a location, so that cross connect, let's say, are there initial fees and then a monthly or annual fee? So what other fees are involved or none in addition to the contract?
Yeah, so the NMI fibers that are being run are all done by us. So we have those fibers connected from the NMI to our instances in the co-locations. That's at no cost to the customer. There is a cost to set up the initial cross connect from our feed to your feed. So that is something that you do have to arrange. You usually have to be the one to initiate that through your co-location provider. Once you initiate that, we basically send an LOA that says, yes, you can connect to our rack. But that is, yes, just the one-time fee that you're paying for. Nothing that's like a monthly fee for that, but I do believe that cross connects are annual.
Well, cross it depends on the co-location provider.
Yeah.
We currently our 4 sites that we're in now in Paris, PA3, New York, NY6, Chicago, CH1, and we will be in London, LD4. Those all happen to be Equinix. But we, as Katie mentioned, we will be expanding to other co-location providers in the future. Basically, the cost for our service is a monthly cost based on a 1-year contract, and the first 60 days covers that beta period. And then as far as the cost to us, that's it.
Yeah.
We do require that the customer provision the cross connect to us. And if you happen to be somewhere where you can connect easily to one of our installations, then it's a simple matter of getting Equinix to provide that cross connect. And then whatever costs are involved in that cross connect are between you and the co-location provider.
Right. Yeah. So when we talk about that contracting piece, right? It's okay. We're in some colo provider. We're in a data center provider, and they have their regular fees and costs for infrastructure connectivity. And so we're running on those, right? So those parts are separate from the service. You know, in the initial, right, there's a little handoff that you have to do, this cross connect where between two tenants of a colo, you know, they have to have this agreement between the two of them to the data center provider for them to make that cross connect between, right? And so that's where you have to, you know, contact and we have to say, yes, we have this, and then they can make that connection. And there is typically a cost, an initial cost for that activity from the data center provider, and then whatever fees they have on maintaining that. And that's separate from the TimeLynx contract that we have.
Yes, correct.
All right, and right now we have our last question here. So this one is a little bit on timelines, and so probably can't get too much into it, but it's a little bit of maybe just, it's a great way to kind of end this is again, kind of reiterating where we are and kind of our general plans and ideas for TimeLynx.
Yes, so this year we are focused on building out London and then also expanding within the regions that we're already in and adding additional data center companies so that we can cover more of those areas, right? So if you're a customer that hosts infrastructure in multiple data center companies, our goal, which we kind of know already exists, we're trying to make sure that we can service those entire infrastructures of those customers. As we approach later this year, we're working on that NIST traceability to come online in Q3. So we have our US NIST traceability set up entirely. And then we are focusing on expanding to Frankfurt next, and then APAC region in India. So that's stuff that's just going to come, you know, next year. We'll start working on Frankfurt, at APAC region and India, most likely, you know, the financial industries in those markets. We do, I think, at some point have a map put together that kind of shows the areas we might be targeting that you can reference. And really the timeline is, you know, we're ramping up and we're trying to move as quickly as possible to make sure that we can service globally, especially in the major regions around the world.
And even if you have an idea for an installation that we haven't mentioned, please reach out to us. Please let us know. Because we are actively looking at other places to expand also. And the more customer feedback we get, that gives us that much more justification to be able to expand in a certain metro.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. Well, Katie, thank you. Dennis, thank you for joining us. Of course, as we said, we do have the links so that you can get to our website, fill out the form, reach out to us with more questions. Thank you for everyone who stayed on. This is going to be available as a recording so that you can watch later or rewatch it, right? And I want to thank you, and back to you.
I want to thank you again for joining us today. As we wrap up, you'll see one final poll on your screen asking if you'd like a member of our team to reach out and help determine whether TimeLynx or another Safran solution best fits your needs. You'll also find links to share your feedback on the webinar or get in touch with us directly. Thank you for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Sync with an Expert presentation. Have a great day.